Seth, which was the bigger surprise, UNC or Arizona going down?
Well, being I picked Clemson, I'm going to have to go the other direction with North Carolina. With North Carolina going down to an Alabama team that imposed their identity on the game. I thought the defensive game plan that Nate Oates had was absolutely incredible. They did not guard Elliott Cadeau. They did not guard Seth Trimble. They absolutely took Grant Nelson, 6'11", 7-foot wingspan, put him in the middle of the lane. Every single time R.J. Davis came off the screen, there was an extra defender. Every time Baycott got posted up, there was an extra defender. They forced someone else to beat him. They were not going to let Carolina's two best players beat him. And then offensively, Grant Nelson was absolutely terrific in terms of attacking matchups. I thought that Alabama's upset was greater because I thought Carolina was playing better coming into obviously the NCAA tournament.
I'm going to agree with you on this, Seth. I'm going to take it a step further. I mean, look, that team that Nate Oates had a little while ago with Brandon Miller, I think they were by far the more talented team. I think this is a better team. The ball doesn't stick as much to one individual's hand. And with the way Mark Sears plays, with the way they actually defended in that game against North Carolina, look, a lot of those shots that R.J. Davis took, who was ACC Player of the Year, in the National Player of the Year conversation, those all were contested shots. And the reality is that North Carolina got lured into playing the same style of basketball that Alabama plays, 3s and 2s. And Seth, you and I both know that's not North Carolina's style to play. They are a defensive team that plays in and out. And when they get away from playing inside out and playing outside in, that plays into Alabama's hands. So I think this is an Alabama team that I'm going to have favored in that game against Clemson. I actually think they're going to be in the Final Four. And they're going to prove my thesis to be correct, that, once again, not a more talented team, but better chemistry team for Alabama moving to the Final Four. That's what I got.
I think the biggest thing, Jay, Will, is their development during the course of the season. Grant Nelson started off, obviously a big name, transferred. He was kind of like the most highly recruited transfer. Versatile, 6'10", handle the ball, could shoot it a little bit, a matchup problem. He struggled early. But slowly but surely, kind of the light bulb went on. They figured out how to use him defensively. They figured out how to use him offensively. And then the perimeter game. The size of the backcourt of Alabama was really a problem for the defense of North Carolina. Estrada, you're talking about Rylan Griffin, you're talking about Mark Sears. All three of those guys, they come at you in warp speed. And then they make you defend all over the floor. The actions that Alabama runs is so difficult. Having said that, and I agree that that was the more surprising, Clemson was absolutely incredible. They were absolutely incredible because Clemson all season long relied on their offense. But in the NCAA tournament, they've been a dominant defensive team defending the three-point line. They absolutely were terrific defending the three-point line and running Arizona off the three-point line. I thought they were terrific, changing their defenses man-to-man. Well, their man was more like a zone anyway. It was toes to the three-point line, keep it in front, no splits, force a contested shot, then go down the other end. And then they went to the zone. And what did Arizona do? They settled in. Instead of dictating the shot they wanted, they settled in, again, not getting to the basket, taking away the high-low game, forcing them to shoot contested threes. And offensively, Clemson is a tough matchup offensively because their bigs are so skilled. So, I talk about, obviously, Alabama's upset, but Clemson, that was a clinic, Jay Will, a clinic on both sides.
Seth,
I don't want to get too cocky, but I'm feeling really cocky right now.
I think Illinois is going to be a big-time matchup because they can score. They may not be able to defend, but they can score. Seth, I'm going to go ahead and say this. I mean, and they have to complete the deal, okay, which means win a championship. But you and I have both spent time with Coach Hurley. I truly believe that when I am around him, we are on the verge of seeing one of the greatest ever to do it. Now, I know he has to close the deal. But you think about one of the most dominant teams, and you talked about losing 5 starters from last year's team on Get Up. He's done it with 2 completely different rosters now, if he's able to seal the deal. And you talk about some of the coaches in rarefied air who have been able to win 2 national championships, the likes of Bill Self and company. If he's able to do that in a 2-year span at his age, what we're seeing right now from a person and a team that he holds everybody accountable. Think about some of the subjects we're going to be talking about today. You imagine if Dan Hurley had to deal with Draymond Green, how would that be in the locker room? How would that pan out? We would see a fight. we would see scraps, we would see claws over the face. It wouldn't just be any kind of like, well, it is what it is. It would be handled very differently. Now, I know it's NBA and college, but we're talking about a team that never plays down to the level of their competition. Could they lose? Yes. Could they have an off night? Yes. But if college basketball were a 7-game series, I would bet on UConn all day long because that dude coaches them differently. I think we're seeing one of the greatest ever to do it. I think by the time it's all said and done, his resume will match up. It may not reach to the pinnacle, but it will match up with some of the greatest coaches to ever coach.
Yeah, 5 of their top 8 scorers departed. 3 guys to the NBA, and yet they're right where they are. I think Danny Hurley is Saban-esque. That's right, because the accountability and the standard. Look, I'm over there watching practice all the time. The standard's the standard when you talk about Connecticut basketball. They're held to that standard every single, from the second they step on that playing court for practice, there's a standard that they're held to. And if they do not fulfill that standard, there's a consequence. And I think in an era where some coaches are afraid to coach their team because they're worried about the transfer portal, because he coaches his team hard, all right, they buy in and they trust him and they believe in him and they play for him. They've got the perfect mixture. They did not collect talent. They actually put together a team. And everyone embraces their roles, and their roles are clearly defined, and everyone champions their roles. And they're all about one thing. They're all about winning. In an era of transfer portal, workout guys, grassroots, expectation to get to the league, collectives, NIL, not a factor. Not a factor. They're about one thing. They're about winning. And it's because it comes from the top, it comes from the staff, it comes from the preparation, it comes from the accountability on a daily basis. And I think it's a great lesson for a lot of coaches that are afraid to coach their team. Have a relationship with your players, earn their trust, and then coach them. And at the end of the year, if they don't want to be coached hard, they can leave. They're not going to help you win anyway. Now, having said that, Illinois poses some problems. Illinois poses problems because those 3 perimeter guys are all 6'6". Illinois poses some problems because Terrence Shannon has absolutely been brutal and absolutely on a tear. And the 2 big guys are a concern. Coleman Hawkins, Dane Danger, they can kind of get into the bench maybe a little bit of Connecticut. But I still think Connecticut, the most dominant, most prepared team in college basketball.
Which team, Andraya, is currently the biggest threat to South Carolina taking this home?
Molly, as I was listening to Perk talk about Draymond Green and he brought up food, I started to think about South Carolina and other teams. And you know how you set a table and there might be something missing? Your silverware is missing, your drink might be missing. South Carolina is the only team that has set the table and nothing is missing. They're not missing anything on offense. They're not missing anything on the bench. They're not missing anything on defense. And so to answer your question, South Carolina is the biggest threat to South Carolina. I truly believe, I said this early when the tournament started, I've said this during the season, teams can only beat South Carolina if South Carolina helps them. Like, I've tried to look at different teams. Like, you could say Iowa because Caitlin Clark can put up incredible numbers. You could say LSU because they have Angel Reese and Anissa Morrow, and it was close when they played in the first half. Even Notre Dame, I love Notre Dame's big 3, but it's just not close when it comes to looking at all the aspects of the game. South Carolina wins in every aspect. So even for me, if they fall short in a couple, they dominate in all of the others. So I still stand 10 toes down on South Carolina being the biggest threat to South Carolina because all the other teams are in the same group.
I'd love to see them in the end. They're kind of like UConn in the men's tournament. It's if they beat themselves. But you mentioned Notre Dame. How dangerous is super freshman Hannah Hidalgo in this Notre Dame squad? Because I haven't seen her much.
Hannah Hidalgo is elite on both ends of the floor. She is the best two-way player in the country. I still believe she should win Naismith Defensive Player of the Year. She's leading all players in fast break points in the tournament. She has speed, she has incredible anticipation. And Molly, I know you said you haven't seen her, so I have to try to explain this, and I'm gonna light up as I say this. She just plays with so much joy. Like, I haven't seen someone on the court have the type of energy, and it radiates from her. If Notre Dame was in any other region, I would have them as a Final Four team.
Wow.
Because they're in South Carolina's region, I don't have them in a Final Four. But with Hannah Hidalgo, how elite she is, and then Sonia Citron and Maddie Westbeld, they have a true big three. It's South Carolina that's in the way. But Hannah Hidalgo's dangerous right now, and she'll be dangerous for the entirety of her career.
Yeah, and she's just a freshman. All right, looking ahead to tomorrow's Sweet 16 matchups. You know, everyone wants to see Angel Reese talking about star power and LSU taking on UCLA. And then there's Caitlin Clark in Iowa taking on Colorado. Andraya, how likely is it we get this heavyweight matchup of LSU versus Iowa Elite Eight?
You know, Molly, I've gone back and forth on this one because all four teams that have to play for us to get Iowa and LSU, all four teams have looked up and down to me at times. I had Iowa and LSU when I originally filled out my bracket, and I have Iowa and LSU still coming out after watching the teams play. I believe we get this heavyweight national championship rematch. I really do. It's going to be tough. Colorado's going to try and give Iowa a run for their money. They're going to try and make Caitlin Clark pass the ball to her teammates and challenge her teammates to make shots. They did not do that in the West Virginia game. Caitlin Clark was able to pull them through. Colorado's going to have a tall task trying to limit Caitlin this season. They weren't able to do it last season. Caitlin had 31 points on 50% from the field. That's going to be an interesting matchup. And then LSU, UCLA, this is also a heavyweight battle. They both have size on the inside. They both have three dynamic scorers in the starting lineup. I give LSU the edge because overall, top to bottom, they just have more talent, in my opinion. They've had more pieces contribute in their last win. They had 4 players in double figures. And Haley Van Lith still hasn't played well for LSU. So I firmly believe LSU is going to beat UCLA. Iowa's going to beat Colorado. And we get this matchup. Again, rematch of the national championship. I do think we get it. It's going to be tough on both sides, but I think we get it.